How we doing? We good? Okay, I got two things for you real fast before we dive in here. Number one is I work in venture capital, which means that we just take money and put it into companies. Before that, I worked at a company called ExactTarget and then Salesforce. ExactTarget was and still is the largest email service provider in the world. We sent 60 billion emails a year to consumers, everything from Nike to Gap, to Zillow at one time. And throughout that entire process, the one thing that we learned was tracking data is important, and Sarah talked about this a little bit earlier. We track thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of consumers and how they interacted with digital properties, because that's what we wanted to know in order to sell our technology. So everything in this deck has to do with the past 5 years of just trying to be obsessed about how consumers use digital. The second thing is, I have 80 slides that we are going to get through in 30 minutes. It's kind of like presentation on crack. So if you want to tweet me, I can then share the slide, share a link to this presentation afterwards where you guys can go download it. I'm almost positive that we're going to be sending this presentation out after as well. So in order for us to overcome fear, we must understand change, right? I mean, it's a tenet to survival. You have to understand change. So I have two trends for you real fast. Spencer touched on one of them briefly at the beginning of the day, but the first one is mobility. Actually, he touched on both. And I'm going to do it really fast because we all know mobile is important. Who uses their mobile phone as their alarm clock in the morning? Okay. Who gets pissed off when somebody's ringtone is the same as your alarm tone? Have you ever had that happen? Like you're just cringing. I heard that at 4 a.m. this morning, and you hit the don't hit people, but you might hit the person. But it's completely enveloped everything that we do, and we spend time on it constantly. We know that. But the one thing that mobile has done, and we talk about this with hundreds of software companies every year, is that every customer is a consumer first. We all buy stuff all the time, and the experiences that we have with brands are training us to want to purchase everything in the same way. And the consumer experience is seamless, absolutely seamless, depending on who you're talking to. So with that is a story. This is Caden. Thank you. He is available for brochures or apartment tours. You can just set him in the apartment and he will sell it every time, believe me. He can't walk, but he can sit there. So he hits his head a lot, but that's okay. Caden, of course, as a first-time parent, I'm constantly worried about Caden. And so as my wife and I take walks and we're talking about Caden, things randomly pop up like, is Caden cold? Is Caden going to be able to get out of his room if there's a fire in the house? Is Caden going to run out of food? Is Caden? What is my number one tool that I use to make sure Caden is healthy and strong? Amazon. Because 1 click, 2 clicks, everything is easy. I can order, I think I just went forward, sorry. I can order, back to Caden, I can order things for Caden in a split second in 3 or 4 steps. And Amazon, at least last year, spent $13.3 billion in R&D. Let me say that again. $13.3 billion in R&D. So whether they're trying to make their mobile app better or they have Alexa, we know one of two things. One, they're going to try to take every cent that this kid earns in the next 20 years. Or two, they're going to create Terminator and we're all going to die in the near future. So however you want to build that, they are changing the way we're experiencing brands. And the one thing they're investing in, which Spencer talked about earlier, which I call smart machines, bots, robots, whatever you want to say, they're here to stay, and they're automating a lot of what we do. That's okay because they make our jobs better, and I'm not talking about the racist Microsoft AI chatbot, if you remember that. I'm talking about AlphaGo from Google. I'm talking about Betterment, which is a great financial app, which we'll talk about later. I'm talking about x.ai, which is basically a robot that schedules meetings for you, which we'll talk about even later on today. And narrative science, which is one of my favorite, They are actually transforming the way that they generate news stories and industry reviews. Our technology application generates news stories, industry reports, headlines, and more at scale without human authoring or editing. If you go to Forbes and type in narrative science, there's actually articles that this app has written off of earnings reports. Right? It's not writing poetry, but it's changing the landscape of how we feel, how we think, and it's using data to do that. So, the point is that you shouldn't have any fear of this future trend and current trend. I think mobile is here to stay. We all know that. Smart machines, apps, bots, they're all changing the way we do things. The point is that we don't necessarily survive, we evolve. And we have to evolve. And I'm going to focus mainly on marketing, because that's what I've spent my time in, but we have to evolve as an industry. We have to evolve as owners, as CEOs, as leaders, in order to embrace how consumers are changing. And you've pretty much heard this entire morning about that. So, embracing the 4 Ps of digital evolution. So there's 4. I'm going to touch on them briefly. People, persona, process, and performance. People, persona, process, and performance. The people is that, do you have the right people? Hire for aptitude, attitude, and agility. The best people on the face of the planet can help you grow what you do. And if you have B players or C players, you probably should think about A players. My favorite tweet on the face of the planet is your company's, I sound like Trump. It's huge, it's the best tweet ever. Your company's, that was a terrible impersonation. I apologize. Your company's most valuable resource is actually people giving a crap. Ask yourself, does your system encourage or discourage that? Is your team organized to win in the digital environment? Frankly, I think that we're not. I don't think teams are organized very well to do that. If you look in some major corporations, sometimes the mobile team is buried in IT, the website team is in marketing, and the social team is in PR. It doesn't make any sense. And so as we're building out software companies at the firm, the venture capital firm, the firm I work at now, we're trying to figure out what's the best way to organize a modern marketing organization. And this is what I believe it should be. Now, you can change this depending on your scope, the size of your company, what you feel like you need when it comes to strategy. But there are 3 main points for a marketing team. It's acquisition, conversion, and brand. Conversion also pertains to retention, customer service, which we'll talk about later. Acquisition is digital, traditional, advertising, field managers, operations, automation, conversion, personas, messaging, sales enablement, training, retention, and brand is content, PR, brand enablement, corporate communications, creative, and events. I believe that that's how a modern marketing org should be structured. And the marketing team of the future controls every aspect of the consumer experience. I think the system is broken when marketing is not somewhat influencing every touch point between a brand and a consumer. They don't have to control it, but they have to be involved in it. Because the experience is the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that makes us relevant, is the consumer experience. I don't care if it's the parking lot or your mobile app. It's all experience, right? And it all destroys or develops a brand, depending on how you do it. I actually love socks. I have a lot of socks, which is kind of weird. My wife makes fun of me all the time. But who has Stance? Has anybody heard of Stance socks? Okay, they're awesome. You can get like Anthony Hardaway on your socks, if you guys are familiar with the player, basketball player. I love Stance socks. The product is awesome. It's soft. You get it in the mail. It's like opening an iPhone. It's just a pair of socks. They're comfortable. They also do underwear. I'm not going to talk about that, but I get those too. The socks are really expensive. The underwear is like $40 a pair. I had it for a couple weeks, and they just started getting holes, both products. And so I tweet Stance, and I'm like, what the hell, Stance? I'm spending a lot of money on this, and my Hanes are holding up better than my Stance, right? And they never responded. I emailed customer service. Did I get an email back? No. It's important that the customer experience is at the forefront. Am I going to buy Stance again? No, I'm not, because it's a commodity product. Even though it's way too expensive and the product's crap now. Don't tweet that. Then we get in a Twitter fight, like Trump and Hillary. We don't want that. Okay, sorry, I'm stuck on the debate. So marketing should control, or at least influence, every aspect of the customer experience, or the consumer experience. Sarah talked about this quite a bit, so I'm going to be brief. The number one issue that we see in marketing departments or companies is a lack of persona. It's a lack of understanding your customer, their behavior, motivations, goals, and the demographic makeup of that group. That is the number one issue we see in companies. They could have all the data in the world, they could have the best tech in the world, and they have no idea how to sell their product because they haven't researched it. I cannot make this point louder. I could scream. Personas are one of the more important things you can do. I don't need to talk about the definition because we already did. Semi-fictional representation of your ideal customer. And you should do multiple versions of these because you have multiple different versions of customers, but they should be based off of qualitative and quantitative data, and you should be able to handle that data and manage it appropriately, which we'll talk about later. Process. How does your team operate and optimize for product pricing, promotions, and channels? That's a lot in there, but process is even more important sometimes. Because great processes and being able to develop processes allow to create great experiences and great marketing, in my opinion. So, process tip number one is your UX experience matters. See what I did there? UX, user experience. I'm not just talking about digital experiences. I'm talking about the entire experience of a product or brand. Get the experience right and your product will sell itself. Seriously. Get the experience right and your product will sell itself. That means that from start to finish, you are influencing one of the better experiences that the consumer can have with your brand over the competitor. A great example of this, which I talked about before, is Betterment. Who's familiar with Betterment? I can basically go and within 6 steps, or even 4 steps sometimes, put in financial information and it spits out information to me that my financial advisor took 3 months to get to me. 3 months. And it's a great UI. It's only 4 steps. If you have more than 2 to 4 steps in order to get to a goal, if a consumer has to take more than 4 steps to get to do something with you, you've already broken the experience. If I have to go through 5 pages to find your phone number that I can't click on my mobile phone, you've broken the experience. It's important that you take into account. So experience, the product will sell itself or your customers will sell it for you. And x.ai, which I talked about earlier, is a great example of that. If you search x.ai, there are hundreds of tweets of people just talking about this person, Amy Ingram. If you ever get an email from Amy or Andrew Ingram, it's not a real person. It's a robot. They get flowers sent to the office for Amy. Amy's been asked out on dates via email. No joke, not a real person. It's a server somewhere, or probably multiple servers, right? But they created an easy-to-use product that solved one problem, booking more meetings and doing it effectively. And Amy has done that, and her brother Andrew has done that. And now Amy and Andrew are booking meetings with each other. We're talking about crazy. Think about how much time you spend booking meetings and solving that problem. So the problem with that is, though, 73% of companies consider user experience a top priority. Guess how many are actually delivering an excellent experience digitally? 1%. 1%. This is from a stat from user testing, Forrester Research. 1% of companies deliver an excellent experience. That's because they're not tracking the customer journey. Usertesting.com is a great company that allows you to use panels to test your digital experiences or even your actual brick and mortar experiences. So I encourage you to go check out usertesting.com. I didn't want to put too much content in here for user testing, but usertesting.com is a great product or service to use in order to test whether you think something is right or wrong, or whether it's working. Process tip number 2 is customer service is the new marketing, by far, in my opinion. Also, the opinion of a good friend of mine, Jay Baer. Is anybody familiar with Jay Baer? Yes, yeah, usually. He gets the whoops. He has a new book out called Hug Your Haters. We're going to talk a little bit about Hug Your Haters and why customer service is the new marketing. But first, I'm going to get on a little bit of soapbox for social media. I actually should probably buy a soapbox that I can stand on stage. When it comes to customer services and the new marketing, and when it comes to social media, I truly think that social media engagement is about retention, not acquisition. Social advertising is a great tool to use for acquisition. But social media at its core, when we're talking about engagement, should be primarily used for customer service and retention. Because most of the time, depending on the person, they are tweeting, Facebook posts, email, trying to manage their needs via digital channels. So, it's time to hug your haters. We don't do that very effectively as a group, as professionals. We spend $500 billion per year in marketing and $9 billion per year in customer service. It doesn't make any sense, honestly. Do you spend more money to get a new customer than to keep him or her? Yes. But we don't respond. We're not spending time and energy trying to retain people. We're trying to get people, and that's a broken system. 40% of social media haters expect a reply within 1 hour. 1 hour. Stance never responded to me. I hate them. But if they would have responded, answering one complaint online increases customer love as much as 25%. Jay did a great study using Edison Research where they actually have data to back these quotes up. Answering one complaint online increases customer love as much as 25%, and we expect answers all the time. 80% of companies say they deliver exceptional customer service. 80%. Who thinks they deliver exceptional customer service? Oh, come on, you guys. None of you? Oh, you do. Okay, that's good. 2 out of the 700. That's good. 8% of their customers actually agree. There's something broken in there. And I think that it's the way, it could be multiple things, but it's the way organizations are set up. It's the way that we think about investment in budgets in companies. It's really important that customer service is paramount because retaining people is almost more important than getting them. Depending on the industry, of course. But we've seen that across the board, whether we were working with retail, whether we're working with financial services, or whether we're working with software companies. So, a good tip that he has within the book, and I encourage all of you to go buy it right now using the Amazon app. You could have bought it by now, and it will be delivered by drone to your hotel room. So just get that done. Go back and answer the first 2 pages of reviews everywhere. Everywhere. First 2 pages. And make sure you're setting up a process in order to do that. It's extremely important in order to retain people. Okay, performance, last one. Do you have the system in place to track and evolve? My favorite quote on the face of the planet, I have a lot of things on the face of the planet apparently, we must move from numbers keeping score to numbers that drive better actions. I don't think we do this very well as marketers, as professionals. I think we use data to keep score constantly instead of driving strategy. It's extremely important. This is a quote from David Walmsley. He ran multi-channel marketing for Marks & Spencer out of the UK. So performance tip number 1 is data is life. Data is everything. Absolutely everything. And you've heard this trend over today, right? Being able to manage data effectively is everything. Because 70% of technology implementations fail because of bad data. We see it time and time and again in software companies that we'll go into to help grow, and they install a new marketing automation system, or they install a new CRM, or they install something else in their tech stack, and what happens? Tags aren't right, or the data's old, and everything breaks because they didn't set the processes up front in order to manage data effectively, and I'll give you a few tips on how to do that. And then there's always a discussion around small data versus big data versus medium data versus somewhat large data versus data. I'll give you the really easy points. Small data, you can manage on an Excel spreadsheet, which you shouldn't do anyway, which we'll talk about later. Big data breaks Excel. So the point of this story is don't manage things in Excel. I'm going to say it again. Don't manage things in Excel. Don't manage things in Google Sheets. Manage things in a system of record. Okay? So how do you efficiently and effectively manage data? I think you should do database cleansing. It should be a top priority. You should understand the data within your database, the persona data, the purchase data, everything that you have that's metric-oriented, you should understand it on a weekly and monthly basis, and you should cleanse that data quarterly. And if you don't have somebody on your team, or you don't have some contractor somewhere or a vendor that does that, you need to go find one, because your future as a marketer and as an industry depends on your data, because it helps you make better decisions from a strategic perspective as well as an experience perspective. Database cleansing should be top priority. Do you have someone focused on data management, which I just talked about? Get your team off spreadsheets. Get your team off spreadsheets. One system of record for the entire company, good luck with that, depending on how large your company is. It's something that you should strive to do. Get your team off spreadsheets, and get your team off spreadsheets. So 50% of those tips are about spreadsheets. I'm sorry, Microsoft. I'm just sorry. So get your team off spreadsheets. So really the only thing you should remember from this presentation is Louis C.K. is hilarious and you should not be using Excel. That's it. All right, performance tip number 2, better goal tracking leads to better results. We spend a lot of time and energy vetting software because we invest in software companies. So we get to see a huge, thousands of companies a year that are software companies. And so I wanted to show you what I use internally, and then give you some tips on software you can use to help manage your goals. My primary tech stack, minus Slack, I forgot to put, I'm sorry, Stuart Butterfield, I forgot to put Slack up here. For goal project management, I use Betterworks and Trello. Our CRM is Salesforce, and our data/automation is Pardot and Google Analytics. This is what I use within OpenView. This is what we recommend to a lot of our software companies. I'm gonna talk about the goal and project management side of it because I think it's really important, and they're the two tools that anybody can use. Betterworks and Trello. Betterworks is a great way to do waterfall goal management. One of the best things about Salesforce, where I was at for a year and a half after ExactTarget was acquired, is that Mark Benioff creates goals, the CEO and founder of Salesforce, and they have a system within Salesforce that waterfalls goals all the way down to me, the lowly person. And I can track all the goals that I set all the way up to Mark Benioff and know how they track to the 5 company goals that he created at the beginning of the year with his leadership team. Betterworks is a system that allows you to do that. It allows a waterfall effect of goals where you can constantly track how all team members are doing related to the company goals that were set at the beginning of the year. This also allows you to be more agile. Change goals, adjust goals, monthly, quarterly, so you can actually see what's happening. The world is moving way too fast for us to have spreadsheets that are managing goals. You have to know how things are changing, and you have to see the data and be able to use the data effectively. Betterworks is a great tool to do that. Trello is our project management tool. If you guys are familiar with Scrum or Agile, it's based off of that methodology, but it's basically cards that you can slide over to backlog, to do, doing, done, or killed. Killed is the lonely OpenView community development. You see, we killed. Online community. but it allows us to manage projects internally as a team. And it's extremely effective in order to see what everybody is doing on a daily basis. Okay, performance tip number 3, die engagement metrics, long live unit economics. It's my last one. Die engagement metrics, long live unit economics. I believe that the marketing team should function like an e-commerce company. If you know anybody that works in e-commerce, they are crazy obsessed with every minute detail of what is happening on the website. They know how many consumers were on what sunglasses page, and they knew where they came from, and they know how much they spent yesterday, and they can track all of their behavior all through the web, which is kind of creepy, but they do that. I believe that marketing should function like an e-commerce company because data is so important to e-commerce. Engagement is important, like open rate, click-through rate, followers, blah, 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 but it's secondary. I think we spend too much time talking about engagement when unit economics of how a business grows can be very beneficial to how you're building strategy. So kind of a boring point, but unit economics are direct revenues and costs associated with a particular business model expressed on a per unit basis. And some of those are lifetime value, the amount of revenue a single user generated during the entire duration of their usage of your service. As one, there are plenty. Your CEO, your leadership teams should know this. And you should strive to understand the unit economics of what drives your business better than the CEO or as well as the CEO. I don't think we spend enough time actually understanding what happens after we get the person to buy. What's the lifetime value of that person? How much did it cost to acquire that person? Okay, it's about quality over quantity. Okay, so out of the 4 Ps, in order to survive the digital apocalypse that is nearing with Terminator and all that, people, persona, process, and performance. A better way to say it is that we believe providing individual with this service will result in this outcome. We will know this when we see measurable result. Or said another way, your people should develop and redevelop your personas and processes to improve performance. That is how we survive digital. That's how we evolve with digital, is that you have the best people, you understand your personas, you are building processes around channels that work, that drive future performance. And then one last thing for you before I run off stage. You're not marketers, growth hackers, which I hate that term, CEO, I hate even more, social media ninjas. If you have ninja in any title anywhere on any social media, you should never come talk to me ever. Okay. Digital marketing savants, or again, growth hackers. You're experienced makers and managers. The only thing that makes you relevant in what you do is the experience the consumer has with your brand. That is it. That is all. And your ability to manage data effectively in order to deliver that experience is extremely important. So thank you guys, I appreciate it.